A rare get-together. President Moon Jae-in and the leaders of South Korea's 5 political parties will meet this afternoon for the first time in well over a year. Topping the agenda, countering Japan's crushing trade curbs on Seoul. Deadline day. Japan wants a response from Seoul today on its offer to form a third-party arbitration board on wartime forced labor. On Tokyo's trade curbs, the US tells South Korea it'll do what it can to help. Plus, local firms scramble to find other countries that can supply it. With the high-tech materials targeted by Japan, furious over Tokyo's heavy-handed move, South Koreans intensify their boycott of Japanese goods and trips to the country. So we start this morning with that big political news here in South Korea. President Moon Jae-in and the leaders of the nation's 5 political parties, they're all going to get together at the top office this afternoon for talks on pending issues, including Japan's export restrictions against South Korea. The meeting itself is scheduled for 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Korea time, so 2 hours long, and it's the first of its kind since March 2018. The rival party chiefs will be briefed on the government's strategy against Japan's move and countermeasures to these curbs. They'll also discuss other pending issues regarding North Korea and a multi-billion-dollar supplementary budget bill that's stuck in the National Assembly. President Moon previously expressed willingness to hold such talks in May to discuss Seoul's efforts to send food aid to North Korea, but the proposal was rejected at that time by the main opposition Liberty Korea Party. The head of the Liberty Korea Party has said now, though, that he's willing to attend this meeting, citing the urgency of the situation with Japan. Now, Japan's trade curbs that target South Korea's semiconductor industry could have an unintended effect, namely hurting companies and consumers around the world, not just those of us here in South Korea. This is according to a local government official who also urged Tokyo to honor its promise made at the recent G20 summit to uphold the principles of free trade. The comments also came on the eve of today's unilaterally imposed deadline by Japan to form a third-party arbitration board on wartime forced labor. Park Hee-jun with the details.
South Korea says Japan's recent trade sanctions will have dire consequences on firms and consumers around the world and implored Japan to call off its measures. A government official told foreign correspondents in Seoul Wednesday that the export restrictions will disrupt chip production lines and severely affect companies like Apple, Amazon, Dell, and Sony. They said its effects will be felt by billions of consumers around the globe. The official expressed disappointment regarding the measures that targeted the semiconductor industry, this especially as semiconductors take up around 25% of Korean exports, while Korean chipmakers account for 70% of the world's DRAM production as well as a significant portion of NAND flash and system memory. He said Korea will have to take great efforts to produce these sanctioned chemical products and machinery domestically. And because that will unhinge the global value chain that once worked well, the official says users who rely on Korean semiconductors will also suffer immensely. The official called on Japan to honor its promise made at the G20 summit in Osaka last month that it will continue to uphold the principles of free trade. Warning that such actions violate WTO rules, he urged Tokyo to withdraw them immediately. He also reiterated that the South Korean government hopes to resolve the issue constructively through dialogue and creative solutions. It believes them to be the best way to maintain solidarity between Korea, the US, and Japan, especially amid the numerous challenges in the region. Stressing that science and technology are not a tool for war, the official emphasized the need to settle the conflict regarding export control and the Supreme Court ruling for future-oriented relations. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, Japan has rebuffed South Korea's proposal to hold another working-level meeting by next Wednesday on Tokyo's export curbs. Citing government sources, Japan's Kyodo News reported Wednesday that Tokyo believes it will be difficult to have another meeting since mutual trust has been damaged. A senior official at Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry was quoted as saying, "The relationship of trust has been broken." Kyodo News added the Japanese Trade Ministry plans to answer South Korea's inquiries about the trade restrictions by email or other means instead of face-to-face meetings. And the Foreign Affairs Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives has passed a resolution emphasizing the importance of three-way cooperation between Seoul, Washington and Tokyo amid this trade row between the Asian nations. The resolution, which was passed on Wednesday local time, calls for constructive and future-looking Seoul-Tokyo relations for the sake of U.S. diplomatic, economic and security interests. Congress is also moving toward resolving the conflict, including setting up a possible meeting with lawmakers from all three countries before the end of this month. Now, South Korean companies are reportedly scouring the world for alternate sources for the high-tech materials that have been targeted by Japan's export curbs. It's thought they are looking at countries like China, potentially Taiwan as well, to step into Tokyo's shoes so they can give South Korea's semiconductor industry the stability it's really crying out for at this sensitive time. Our Seo Eun-kyung with the details.
According to reports, Samsung Electronics and SK hynix are searching for alternative sources of high-tech materials, including efforts to localize their production in response to Japan's export curb. The latest reports from the foreign press lend credence to speculation that Korean firms are looking into ways to reduce their dependence on Japan. Japanese financial newspaper Nikkei reported on Tuesday that Samsung Electronics and SK hynix began conducting quality tests for etching gas, which does not originate from Japan. It said the Korean IT giants could produce semiconductors of the same quality as the ones using Japanese-made etching gas in about 2 to 3 months' time. Another Japanese financial newspaper, Nihon Keizai, also released a similar report while speculating that the supplier of the etching gas in question could be from China, Taiwan, or Korea. Meanwhile, China's Shanghai Securities News reported on Tuesday that a Chinese chemical company, Binhua Group, has signed an agreement with Korean chipmakers to supply etching gas. Tokyo's export ban includes fluorinated polyamides, photoresist, and etching gas, which are used for the production of chips and displays for smartphones and TVs. Korea is relatively less dependent on Japan for the supply of etching gas compared to the fluorinated polyamides and photoresist, of which 90% are imported. According to the Korea International Trade Association, China accounted for 46.3% of South Korea's etching gas imports from January to May this year, followed by Japan at 43.9%. This suggests that Beijing could satiate Korea's demand for etching gas even if supply from Japan was disrupted. Seo Eun-kyung, Arirang News.
Now, with the trade fight between South Korea and Japan raging and, if anything, steadily intensifying, local merchants are taking the drastic step of boycotting all Japanese goods. More and more South Korean vacationers are also changing their previous Japan travel plans to other countries as well. Lee Seung-jae reports.
This is the largest South Korean internet group dedicated to helping locals plan trips to Japan. Its membership stands at 1.3 million strong. However, with the rapidly expanding boycott campaign against everything Japanese in South Korea, the site is shutting up shop, at least temporarily.
This is the first time I've seen people in the group calling for a boycott, and this is a massive group of people who love traveling to Japan.
Even the Busan National Science Museum, which planned a group trip to Japan for scientific research, has called off its trip.
The atmosphere doesn't seem to be improving. As a result, we've decided to go elsewhere.
With so many cancellations, the number of South Korean visitors to Japan is down 3.8% in the first half of this year compared to the same period last year. And with more people boycotting Japanese products as well, a number of online shopping sites, which provide locally made goods in place of Japanese products, are sprouting up on the internet.
I don't buy Japanese products, but now I'm conscious about not buying them.
With Japan apparently unwilling to retract its export curbs on South Korea anytime soon, the boycott looks set to rumble on, harming the economies of both countries. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The International Monetary Fund has warned that global trade tensions are really weighing now on the world economy. In its annual external sector report Wednesday, the IMF said all countries should avoid policies that distort trade and call for greater urgency in tackling persistent excess imbalances, saying countries should refrain from using tariffs to target bilateral trade balances. It added recent trade actions have had a minimal impact on global imbalances, but higher tariffs have been hurting the world economy. The report also called for reviving liberalization efforts and modernizing the multilateral rules-based trading system, as well as more enforceable WTO commitments. The Federal Reserve says the US economy is continuing to grow at a modest rate, and the overall outlook has been generally positive despite the recent disruptions caused by the Trump administration's trade policies. In a report on Wednesday, the Fed said employment continues to expand and the labor market remains tight, with contacts across the country experiencing difficulties filling open positions. So it means there are more jobs than they're able to fill. The report described an optimistic US economy ahead of a meeting at the end of this month where the Fed is widely expected to cut interest rates. Now, as a follow-up to that, we do have some news just coming in, perhaps anticipating what the Fed is going to do. The Bank of Korea, in a relatively surprising move, has cut its benchmark interest rate by 25 basis points to 1.5%. This came during the central bank's fifth monetary policy meeting for this year. The Bank of Korea has kept its key rate the same since November of last year, when it hiked borrowing costs by 0.25 percentage points. We'll have much more details on that big story in our coming newscast. That's at noon Korea time. A once all-powerful Mexican drug lord has been sentenced to life behind bars, plus an extra 30 years in the United States. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Hong Yu. So tell us more about this rather remarkable downfall of this notorious drug kingpin.
Sure, Mark. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the Mexican cartel boss in question, has been sentenced to life in prison without the chance for parole. This comes after a jury found him guilty in February on all counts of smuggling tons of drugs to the U.S. He was found guilty on 10 federal charges, including murder conspiracies, running a continuing criminal enterprise, and other drug-related charges. In addition to his life sentence, Guzman has to pay a $12.6 billion forfeiture, the estimated amount of money he made through drug trafficking. Before his sentencing, Guzman told the judge that his case was stained and he had been denied a fair trial. He described his incarceration in the U.S. as physical, emotional, and mental torture. Guzman's defense said the trial was not justice, alleging up to 5 jurors broke the law by reading about the trial. Guzman was extradited in 2017 to an ultra-secure unit at a Manhattan jail after breaking out of Mexican prisons twice. He's now expected to be transported to the Supermax federal facility in Colorado to live out the rest of his days behind bars. The European Union has launched a formal investigation into Amazon over allegations it uses independent retailers' data to get an illegal edge when selling its own products. The probe will look into the U.S. e-commerce giant's business practices to see if it has broken EU antitrust rules. The formal investigation comes after a preliminary investigation launched last year found Amazon was using competitively sensitive information from independent retailers. Such investigations are aimed at preventing tech giants from abusing their market dominance to kill off their competition. If Amazon is found to have breached EU antitrust rules, it could be fined up to $23 billion. The World Health Organization has declared the Ebola crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo a public health emergency of international concern. Wednesday's declaration comes as almost 1,700 people have died since the outbreak was reported 11 months ago. Since then, a campaign of vigilance and vaccination had kept the virus confined within 2 provinces in northeastern Congo. But on Wednesday, the WHO reported a fisherwoman had died in Congo after 4 vomiting incidents at a market in Uganda. The WHO said the designation is aimed at accelerating production of the vaccine, which is in short supply.
Young South Korean diver Kim Soo-ji surprised the nation last weekend with an unexpected bronze medal at the 2019 FINA World Championships in Gwangju here in South Korea. Now, diving isn't a particularly well-known sport in Korea, so it was a historic moment for Kim and the country's history in the sport. Our Lee Min-sun went to Gwangju to meet the unlikely medalist and filed this report.
South Korean diver Kim Soo-ji became a household name on Sunday at the 2019 FINA World Aquatics Championship by winning a bronze medal in the women's 1-meter springboard. She is the first ever South Korean diver to reach the podium at the international swimming competition. The 18-year-old diver says her medal-winning effort came as a surprise even to her.
Before I first dove, I didn't think I would win a medal at all, but the results turned out to be much better than I had expected. So my coach told me there was hope in the final round, but I thought of it as a joke. But I'm really satisfied that I got such a great result.
Kim dove into the water as many as 200 times a day in the lead-up to her historic 5 dives in the final rounds of 1-meter springboard. Her monumental achievement was in the 1-meter event, which is not an official Olympic event. In order to punch her ticket to the Tokyo Olympics next year, Kim has to be one of 12 finalists in 3-meter springboard.
I personally consider the 3-meter springboard individual event to be the most important competition for me. It's the official Olympic event, so I pay more attention to this. 1 meter is quite low, and there's limited number of turns a diver can make. But for 3 meters, it's higher, meaning there's more space to make turns and more difficult moves.
Kim was only 14 years old when she made her Olympic debut in 2012 at London, but didn't make it to national team for the next Summer Olympics in 2016. And now she's eyeing for her next Olympic chance.
I still have remaining competitions here in Gwangju, so I will focus on those, and if I do get to participate in the Olympics, there's many more places for me to climb up to. I will put more efforts to achieve those goals. I was told to have a big dream, so I'm hoping for a good result in the Olympics.
Kim will compete in 3-meter springboard preliminary rounds on Thursday and the mixed 3-meter synchro springboard final on Saturday. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News, Gwangju.
Time now for our Life and Info segment, where we focus on information that should be useful in your everyday life, whether you're in Korea or elsewhere around the world. And today is Thursday, and that means we turn our focus to culture and to tell us more about what's popping in South Korea right now. I'm glad to say we have our Won Jung-hwan in the studio with us. Jung-hwan, thank you for joining us. What do you have for us today?
Hi Mark, I'm here at the studio today to tell you about a dance competition which is held every year in Seoul. The Seoul International Dance Competition first began in 2004 and has discovered many young and talented artists from around the world.
Right.
The Feast of Dance competition, which will begin this Friday until 27th, will provide a platform for young dancers to compete in their own genres, including ballet, contemporary dance, ethnic dance, and choreography. Some hundreds of young and talented dancers from 9 countries are participating this year. Also, the largest ever number of dancers from abroad are taking part, with some 30% of the total participants being foreigners. The competition is neither the largest in the world nor the most prestigious, but for over 15 years, it has served as a gateway to success for many aspiring young dancers in Korea. It has produced world-class talent such as Kim Gi-min, who became the first Asian ballerino to join Russia's Mariinsky Ballet Group, and Lee Sang-eun, a ballerina in Germany's Dresden Ballet Group. And the executive director of the competition hopes to expand its reputation further.
We'll continue to invite foreign judges who lead and dance for the world's most renowned dance institutions so they can meet the best young dancers in Korea.
And she says that there is no better time than now to gather talented young Korean dancers at the competition.
We have to follow the global trend, and that trend right now is K-pop. I'm trying to include K-pop dance in our competition so it can be open to everyone. We have a lot of room to showcase our young talent.
Well, it would be nice if this competition could become even more global. We all know how popular K-pop is around the world right now. To anyone watching out there, how do you go about applying for this competition?
Anyone can apply this competition without restrictions, but first, obviously, you have to have some sort of background experience of dancing.
Right, that makes sense.
Yes, and most importantly, you have to...
So I can't join? You've seen
maybe.
me dancing before, right?
Maybe if you practice.
I think
really
I'd give 5 seconds and they'd escort me out of the room, but there we go. Carry on.
So, yeah, exactly. Most importantly, you have to pass the preliminary stage first to compete at the main event, which begins this Friday. In fact, there were more than 500 people who applied this year, and only some 350 are left. And that shows the intense level of competition even in the preliminary stage. But there are some dancers who can bypass the screening process altogether. If you receive an award in a major dance competition, such as the National Young Dancers Competition, the Korea Ballet Association Competition, or the Donga Dance Competition, you're automatically qualified for the main event.
So, Jung-hwan, this is a properly professional event then. These are some of the best dancers, not only in Korea, but in the world, actually performing. Right.
That's what I was trying to explain. And for the foreign participants as well, you can enter the competition if you came in at either first, second, or third place at the Youth America Grand Prix in the US, Prix de Lausanne in Switzerland, and the Beijing International Ballet Competition in China, among others. So basically, you're right, you have to be among the best of the best.
Okay, that's interesting, and it would be worth perhaps going to actually just check out the dancing if you're interested in that, to see what competition you're up against if you're wanting to get into the business. What about the rewards then? They must be quite substantial, considering how good you have to be to get very far in the competition. If you win the competition or one of the categories, what kind of prize can they expect?
Since they're young and young, talented dancers, participants who excel will be offered unique scholarship opportunities, including a chance to study abroad at renowned dance schools around the world in countries like France, the UK, and China.
That's incredible. That's almost like Billy Elliot, that movie where he became a famous dancer just because of one small opportunity. So this could be someone's chance.
Exactly. Also, participants will be able to hone their dance skills during the 9-day event, with 1-point lessons being offered by world-class instructors and judges. Through this mentorship opportunity, it's hoped the competition can serve as a stepping stone for dancers to reach a higher plateau in their careers.
Sounds wonderful. We're just watching the video there. Jongwan, I definitely wouldn't be invited to take part in that competition, I can tell you. Just as a reminder then, the competition itself begins on Friday and runs through July 27th at the Mapo Arts Center, right? Mapo
Arts Center near the Shinchon station.
Okay, so and if you want to Google that, you can find out the exact location as well. Jongwan, it's always a pleasure to have you in the studio to talk about cultural events. We do enjoy it a lot. Now we are going to take a quick look at some other culture and sporting events that are taking place across South Korea.
Good morning. The monsoonal front is still dropping showers in the southern provinces, but rain will taper off during the day and pick up later again tonight. And for a closer look, the southern coastal regions are forecast to see up to 250 millimeters of torrential rain, with a heavy rain advisory being in place for Jeju Island. Meanwhile, those of us in the rain-free areas will see scorching temperatures with a heat advisory in place for Seoul and parts of Gangwon-do and Gyeonggi-do provinces. High humidity will add to the discomfort, while daily highs will be in the 20s for rain-affected areas this afternoon. And as for updates on Tropical Storm Danis, all South Korean residents need to be on high alert as the storm turned north on Wednesday and will continue on a northward track, possibly impacting the Korean peninsula from Friday to Sunday. So let's all monitor this storm closely. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Okay, that's all we have for now. Stay tuned for our next newscast. Is coming up in 90 minutes' time. We'll have more on South Korea's decision to slash its interest rate. Until next time, goodbye.